وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your a'mal, your deeds in this blessed month of Ramadan. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all safe and sound. How does the monthly cycle, the menstrual cycle, impact fasting? We have two types of menstruation in Islamic law. One is called the hayd, which is the major menstruation, and we have the istihada, which is the minor menstruation or the minor bleeding. Let's first examine the hayd. The hayd is that monthly cycle that a woman sees. The minimum is 3 days, the maximum is 10 days. So any blood that is less than 3 days is not considered hayd. Now a woman during the hayd does not fast. She breaks her fast. Later she would make it up. She also would not pray the 5 mandatory prayers. Now when it comes to the prayers, they are not to be made up. Only the siyam, the fasting, is to be made up after the month of Ramadan. Now if the blood is less than 3 days, then that is not considered hayd. A woman still has to maintain her fast. In order for it to qualify as hayd, it has to be 3 days of continuous bleeding, meaning that the blood, even if it's not heavy, even if it's light, but it's continuous for 3 days. So the minimum is 3 days and the maximum is 10 days. Anytime the blood exceeds 10 days, then over 10 days it's no longer considered hayd. It is istihada. So while a woman is in her cycle, which on average could be 6, 7, or 8 days, she cannot fast. There is no kafara to pay. All she has to do is make it up after the month of Ramadan. Now there's a question here. What about the ghusl? If a woman becomes pure and her cycle ends, let's say at night, the following morning she has to fast. But in order for her fast to be valid, she must do ghusl al-hayd, the shower, the ritual shower for the menstrual cycle. If a woman deliberately does not do that ghusl, then the following morning her fast is invalid and she has to pay the kafara, because this is like deliberately breaking one's fast. So let's say at 12 midnight, at 1 a.m., at 2 a.m., her cycle ends. She must do the ghusl before Fajr. If Fajr, let's say at 4:30 a.m., she has to finish that ghusl before 4:30. Deliberately delaying the ghusl until after Fajr will invalidate that fast. Yes, if she was not aware, she did not know, then that would not invalidate the fast. Now, what if a woman started fasting in the morning? Around midday, the cycle started, the bleeding started. In that case, this day, her fast would not count. Of course, she receives the ajr, the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making the effort to fast. But her fast will be broken when the cycle starts, and she would have to make it up after the month of Ramadan. Another question here is, can a woman voluntarily take pills to delay her cycle? Some, women ask about this. They would like to fast the entire month of Ramadan, and so they would like to postpone their cycle. Now, there are certain pills that one can take to do that. Is this allowed in Islamic law? Yes, it's allowed. There is nothing in Islamic law that would prohibit a woman from doing that. So this is optional for her. If she would like to do that, this would not be haram. This would not be something that is prohibited. So this is the major menstrual cycle, the hayd. We have now the istihada, which is the minor bleeding. Any blood that falls outside of hayd is considered istihada. So if it's less than 3 continuous days, if it's 1, 2 days, then that is considered istihada. If it continues more than 10 days, then that is also considered istihada. Can a woman fast while she's in istihada? Yes, she must fast and she must pray. Now when it comes to the prayer, she has to do wudu for each prayer. So if she's praying dhuhr and she's done the wudu, she now wants to pray asr. She has to go and do another wudu, renew her wudu, her ablution, and then do asr. What about the fasting? Is the fasting impacted? A number of scholars have mentioned the following. It depends in which stage of istihada she is. Because istihada has 3 categories, 3 scenarios. The very light bleeding, the spotting, the medium bleeding, and the heavy bleeding. If it's light bleeding, then no ghusl is required. She just has to do wudu, as we said, for each salah. But if the bleeding is medium, then 1 ghusl per day is mandatory. So if that medium bleeding, let's say, started before the morning prayer, she has to do the ghusl before the morning prayer. If it started before the dhuhr prayer, she would have to do the ghusl, the shower, before the dhuhr prayer. So 1 ghusl per day will keep her pure. She can maintain her prayers and she can fast. If it's heavy bleeding during istihada, let's say her period ends, right? The period ends, but then she continues to see blood more than 10 days, and it's heavy. This is considered istihada. She would fast and she would pray. However, she would have to, according to our Islamic law and fiqh, she would have to take 3 showers per day. I know this might be difficult, but this is mandatory in our fiqh. So 1 shower before the morning prayer, 1 shower before the dhuhr and asr prayers, and 1 shower before the maghrib and isha prayers. Many scholars have maintained that if she does not take these showers, then her fasting will be impacted. Her fasting will be invalid. Now, if this is harmful, if a woman finds it too burdensome, or it could harm her health to take 3 showers a day, then she can do what is called the tayammum. Basically, it's an alternative to the ghusl, where one strikes the dust or the earth, and they do the tayammum. So that would be an option also. One last point here is nifas, postpartum bleeding. If a woman gives birth to a child, that blood that she sees after childbirth, after going through labor, is considered nifas in Islamic law. During the state of nifas, a woman does not pray and she cannot fast. Now the maximum for nifas is 10 days. So if the bleeding continues up until 10 days, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, 3 days, 4 days, then this is considered nifas, and this is the postpartum bleeding, and she would not fast, she would make it up later. But if it exceeds 10 days, then yes, that becomes istihada, and she would have to maintain her prayers and she would have to fast. There are some people who are under the impression, I hear this a lot, that the nifas, the postpartum bleeding, continues until 40 days. So for 40 days, she does not have to pray, she does not have to fast. That is not the case in our school of thought. The maximum is only 10 days and not 40 days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.